I'm Richard Clarke. I record these talks every day as a way to deepen my inquiry. Listen each day and deepen your own practice. Welcome. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. Today is from Talk 618. A gentleman from Hardware. When I go analyzing myself, I go beyond the intellect, and then there's no happiness. Maharshi, intellect is only an instrument of the self. It cannot help you to know what is beyond itself. Questioner, I understand it, but there is no happiness beyond it. Maharshi, the intellect is the instrument wherewith to know unknown things. But you are already known, being the self which is itself knowledge. So you do not become the object of knowledge. The intellect makes you see things outside, and not that which is its own source. Questioner, the question is repeated. Maharshi, the intellect is useful thus far. It helps you to analyze yourself and know further. It must then be merged into the ego, and the source of the ego must be sought. If that is done, the ego disappears. Remain as that source, and then the ego does not arise. The questioner describes his experience of going beyond the intellect, but finding no happiness there. In his phrasing of the question, when I go on analyzing myself, he reveals his mental orientation. Sri Ramana Maharshi points out that the intellect is only an instrument of the self and cannot help you know what is beyond the intellect. The mistake is in expecting the intellect to provide access to the self, but intellect's function is limited to analyzing and understanding external things. The intellect, by its very nature, turns outward, perceiving objects and distinctions, but it cannot perceive the self, which is its own source. The questioner insists that beyond the intellect there is no happiness. Ramana responds by explaining that the intellect is useful only up to a certain point. It can guide self-inquiry, but it cannot take you all the way. Once self-analysis reaches its limit, the next step is to turn attention inward and seek the source of the ego. This is where true understanding begins. The ego, which creates the sense of separation, arises from a deeper source in which separation does not exist, the self. If attention remains fixed in the self, rather than identifying with the thinking mind, the ego dissolves, and with it, the illusion of limitation. Happiness is not something to be found as an object or experience of the intellect. The reason the questioner finds no happiness when he moves beyond thinking is that he still expects to encounter something in a way the intellect can grasp. But the self is not an object, not an object of knowledge. It is not something to be found outside or even within. It is what you already are. When the ego dissolves, what remains is the natural state of peace and happiness. The dialogue shows how deeply ingrained the habit of looking outward is. Even when turning inward, the mind still looks for something in a way it can comprehend. The shift Ramana Maharshi speaks of is not about discovering something new, but recognizing what has always been present. The intellect may lead you to question, analyze, and reflect, but at some point, the intellect must be left behind, just as a boat is left behind once you reach the shore. Only by remaining as the source, the self, does the false sense of separation disappear, revealing the happiness that was never absent. So know yourself and be always free and at peace. In 40 Verses on Reality, Ramana Maharshi explains the nature of the self, the ultimate reality, and self-inquiry. My new book, with my comments and inquiry questions, opens these teachings up and brings them into your practice and experience. Available now from Amazon. Link in the video description. These videos bring Ramana's teachings into your direct experience. Click subscribe to see more. Click thumbs up to like, and send questions and start a dialogue with a comment.